And welcome to today's episode of The Wisdom of the Soul from the Ageless Wisdom Mystery School. I was playing around with Google the other day, and what do I get if I Google Michael Benner? What do I get if I Google Wisdom of the Soul? And without question, the best way to find all of our stuff is by Googling Ageless Wisdom Mystery School. Uh, you could add my name. It's Google continues to amaze me after all these years. You could just put in a keyword in my name or KPFK in my name with a keyword, and old radio programs come up. It's quite remarkable. So if you ever have an issue, uh, Ageless Wisdom Mystery School, I think, is a great place to begin, and then maybe my name. My primary website is michaelbenner.com, and that's sort of a gateway to everything else. So let me say that up top. Today, we're going to talk a little about Buddhism and a concept known as the Fetters, the 10 Fetters. And if that word seems strange, think of the word unfettered. You know what it means to be unfettered. So a fetter is a tie, a rope, a chain, a bond, and in this context, a hindrance. Sometimes you'll see in Buddhism a reference to the 5 hindrances, which are very, very similar. But the 10 fetters go back to Buddha's original teaching 2,500 years ago. And there are a couple of different versions, but what we'll present today is probably the most fundamental version of the fetters. We'll also talk about 5 kinds of ignorance. I think you'll find this interesting. Yeah, there are 5 different ways, at least in this model, for us to be ignorant. And then at the very end, time permitting, we'll talk about the basic precepts of Buddhist philosophy. There are different schools of Buddhism. Then it becomes acculturated or inculturated. What's the right word? So Thai Buddhism would be different from Cambodian Buddhism. The Zen of Japan is different from Chinese Buddhism. But I'll be as eclectic and all-inclusive as I possibly can in presenting these ideas. The precepts that we'll talk about toward the end of the class are very much like the commandments of Moses. Don't do this, don't do that. But the hindrances or the fetters, the 10 fetters we're going to talk about today, they're not things that you must avoid doing or refrain from doing. They're just a list of things that are going to slow your growth, that are going to hinder you or bind you to samsara, so to speak. And samsara is the endless cycle of birth and rebirth that, along with our identification as physical bodies, as forms, is at the root of all of our suffering. Every problem, all of our torment and misery and suffering. Again, in Buddhism, you often hear reference to suffering, to misery, to torment. And I think it's good to consider that this may be a bit overstated. You say, well, my life is not perfect. It's not a bed of roses, but I'm not really suffering. Well, discontent. How about that? If you're just not as happy as you could be, these problems keep cropping up, or you're having to deal with sadness, emotional sadness, or just your desire nature and the fact that we're never really quite fulfilled. We want what we want, regardless of why we want it. Even if we get it, that fulfillment is transitory. And that's what we're going to talk about today. maybe we could say, maybe we could save ourselves a lot of suffering and spare ourselves some discontent, if not misery, by getting hip to the game and changing our desire nature. You can aspire to things. You can want to accomplish things. But when they don't turn out exactly as you expected them to, maybe it's because you were excessive in your expectations. Maybe we could become more balanced or more realistic in our expectations when we seek to attain something, whether it's a possession like a physical object or a condition or a situation. So that's what we have on tap today. Let's begin, as always, with our opening meditation. So if you get comfortable in your chairs, whatever furniture you're on or pillow on the floor, get in your position, close your eyes, and settle in. Just form the intention to begin to relax and feel your connection to the floor, either through the bottom of your feet. If you're sitting straight up, put your feet flat on the floor. And if you're in a chair, or if you're cross-legged on a piece of furniture like a sofa or a bed, feel that furniture supporting you. Very important first step. Connect to the earth through whatever piece of furniture is supporting you. Feel grounded or plugged in. You've heard me say, imagine how a big tree must feel to be rooted into the earth. Take your mind there. And then stand open and receptive, as you would if you decided to go sit in the sun for a little while and benefit from the vitamin D that you get from sitting in the sunlight. Just feel open and receptive to the warmth of the sun. Though your eyes are closed, you can easily imagine that. So you're plugged into the earth, you're open and receptive to the sky. It's like a battery with two wires. And you feel yourself being recharged. The feeling you're just pretending or imagining it, that's exactly the right feeling. And then let's take a couple of slow, deep breaths. Inhaling through your nose, slowly fill your lungs. Pause for just a moment as you peak and then begin to exhale through the nose or the mouth. And go beyond where you'd normally stop, all the way out. And pause there before beginning to inhale again. Breathing more slowly and more deeply than you usually do is a wonderful way of telling your brain and the unconscious mind that you're actually quite safe. Safe and relaxed. And so particularly as you exhale, create and sense a letting go feeling. It's like a sigh of relief. It's a sigh of release. Feel the letting go as you take one or two more nice, slow, deep breaths. Feeling very safe and relaxed. as if you're dropping your suit of armor. Just feel the letting go. Knowing you're safe and relaxed, allowing my voice to guide you. It's perfectly fine to allow yourself to feel vulnerable. It's a wonderful feeling to feel safe. That nobody's out to get you, nobody wants to bring you down. At least during the next 10 minutes of this meditation. Nobody wants to score points, get a leg up, make you feel inferior. All those concerns you can put down and just be yourself, safe, content, and relaxed. And if you haven't already, breathe normally. Let your body breathe itself. And watch your breath. Find a place near the bottom of your nose. Between the nostrils, perhaps. Maybe the tip of the nose. Maybe just inside the rim of the nostrils. Trust the feeling and find the most comfortable place to allow your attention to rest. At or near the bottom of your nose. And allow yourself simply to watch your natural breathing. Just for a few minutes. Make no judgment. Begin here with no judgment. There's no good breath or bad breath. There's no way you could breathe better or not be very good at breathing. Especially since you don't engage any kind of effort. You simply watch your body breathing itself. You identify as the witness. Step back. This is the point of the exercise. I am not the breather. I'm simply the awareness of my body being breathed on my behalf. I am the curious witness, simply watching my body breathe itself all by itself. That should not only be interesting, but quite fascinating. To consider that the self, I, me, mine, myself, is a level of awareness that lives in a body that breathes all by itself without any attention, without any intention. It just breathes. Consider for a moment, so too your heart beats all by itself. It's self-regulating. Actually, the signal that causes the heart to beat, that stimulates the heart, comes from within the heart, not the brain. The heart knows. It's not far out. Take a step back and let go. Let your heart beat itself. It's been doing it all your life. It's doing a pretty good job. If someone asked you how you digest food, you'd have no idea. You may have a vague idea, something to do with saliva and stomach acids, and I don't know really. Much less repairing and replacing cells, putting disease, illness, the common cold into remission, healing a cut, an abrasion, a wound, a bruise. You have no idea. And you don't need to know. It's pretty far out. Say to yourself silently and internally, I'm not doing any of those things. They're happening on their own. On my behalf. But I am the witness, the awareness. That distinction is very important. And so we practice watching the breath, go back to the breath, and watch the ebb and flow for just, how about 3 minutes, as we've done before in past weeks. Let's take 3 minutes while I remain quiet and until you hear my voice again. 3 minutes. Excuse me, 3 minutes. 3 minutes just to watch your body breathing itself, all by itself. remaining in this same place. Inhale just one, slow, big, deep breath. Hold as you peak, and exhale slowly through the nose or pursed lips. And then allow your breathing to return to a natural rhythm. And I'd like you to think about trusting your very first impression. Think about someone you love dearly. I'd like you to consider the nature of that love and that caring. Why you love them. And notice how difficult that is. To actually try to pin down reasons. Maybe a fool's errand. To even consider that there's something reasonable about love. Maybe it's okay to love them for no reason, but simply to acknowledge that there's something lovable about them. Whether this is romantic love, the love of a partnership, a spouse, parental love, the love you have for your children, or as children for your parents. For the warmth and the security of an extended family, your ohana. Which is all your uncles and aunties and cousins and nephews and nieces and even the neighbors who live nearby, who are part of your family in a sense. Love them for no reason. Simply acknowledge how that feels. It's a letting go feeling. Anytime we're tempted to hold on to love, remind yourself that that instead is the fear of losing love. Love cannot be lost. The people we love, the animals we love, the fruits and vegetables and flowers that we love all pass away. But our love does not diminish. Think of someone you love who is no longer in form. Do you love them any less? Of course not. Quite possibly your love has grown. Though everything passes away, this great, indisputable law of impermanence, that all things pass. The one exception is love. And love is awareness. And awareness is love. The ultimate awareness is understanding that love is the only thing that's real. How about that? Love, awareness, consciousness is the only thing that's true. For like energy itself, it cannot be created nor destroyed. It can change form. It has its ebb and its flow. Its in-breath and its out-breath. But it's everlasting. So as we come toward the end of this meditation exercise, and you've come to a place of deep relaxation, surrender to the realization that we love for no reason, that we can be happy for no reason, that we can enjoy peace, deep and profound tranquility for no reason, just because it's true. Against the backdrop of an ever-changing world of appearance and form, it's the ultimate truth. And say to yourself, I am that. I am that awareness. I am that love. I am eternal. And you don't have to carry that. You don't even have to believe it or have faith in it. Just consider it. And you will recognize increasingly just how self-evident this truth is. Let it unfold such that it becomes self-evident. Your knowledge, your understanding, your wisdom, not merely some belief. Prepare yourself to come back to the wide awake state by number one, forming the intention to return. Remember the class, where you are. And two, feel a gentle awakening, a rising up, like you wake up in the morning when there's no alarm clock set. You just gradually float up toward a waking state. And then 3, eyes open now, wide awake, open your eyes, wide awake, back in the room, feeling fine, rested and refreshed, feeling better than before. Good. And a nice big deep breath at the end is always fill those lungs, and then as you exhale, I like to shake or stomp my feet a little bit, stretch, get back in your body. Sometimes you completely lose track of your body, so get back in your body. Get back in the uniform you wear to get around the earth plane. And thank you for that. Felt a nice group energy there. Hope you did too. Okay, Hannah, let's, if you'd come back on mic and let's share that document. I'm calling it a handout. Again,
okay. You want me to share screen the document or read it one at a time like the last one?
No, I think I have mixed feelings about share screening text. So I think we'll save that for graphics and such in the future. Why don't you just begin by reading the headline at the top?
Okay. In Buddhism, fetters are the mental chains that tie us to samsara, the endless cycle of rebirth and suffering, not forbidden, but restraining liberation.
Exactly. So the whole idea of Buddhist philosophy, and again, I hasten to remind us, Buddhism is not a religion. Buddha never mentioned God. They asked him to. People kept asking him to, supposedly 35 times. And there are stories that once he said, yes, there is a God, and everybody was terrified. And another time he said, no, there's not a God, and everybody celebrated. I don't know if that story is true. But I think if it is, he was just toying with them. The truth is he wanted not to speak of it at all, because according to the great teachers down through the ages, he didn't think anybody could comprehend what he would be saying. In fact, there are no words for him to explain. That's why teachers like Buddha or Christ, for example, Christ said the same thing. Christ said, I have to speak in parable, allegory and metaphor, because you wouldn't understand me. So, instead of describing karma, Jesus said, you reap what you sow. And it's just always fascinating to me how few people would make that connection, that that's the same thing. Or thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Isn't that the same thing, that reality is an outpicturing of your beliefs, your expectations, your consciousness on earth as it is in heaven in your mind? So Buddhism is practiced as a religion. I won't dispute that. But many of the shrines in the East are shrines that include like a Buddha statue, but also various Hindu gods and goddesses. And they're all sort of conflated, all put together. So, yeah, I'm sure there are people who would insist that for them, Buddhism is a religion. But I want to make it clear up front that it is primarily a philosophy. If you wish to make a religion out of it, that's up to you. But it's self-help is what it is. It's ancient psychotherapy. It's self-help, it's self-improvement. You develop yourself to become free of suffering. That's what it's all about. Four Noble Truths, before we get into the fetters. Life is suffering. Again, that may seem overstated, so how about full of discontent, dissatisfaction. The law of impermanence I mentioned in the meditation says even the satisfaction that you get from acquiring something that you've desired will fade. That's why marriage needs work. You can fall in love and be swept away, but then when you get in the relationship, it takes work to discover what true love is, not just the romance or being in love with the idea of being in love. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. It takes work. You have to build trust. You have to have mutual respect. There's no love without trust and respect. You have to be decent to each other and be kind. You can't just. I used to officiate at a lot of weddings, and usually it involves some premarital counseling. And I would always say to my clients, "Why are you getting married?" And they'd giggle and be silly and say, "Because we love each other." I said, "Well, that's great. I'm sure happy you're in love." I sort of figured that part, but maybe you didn't hear the question, "Why are you getting married?" And they had no idea. They thought because we're in love with each other and we want to spend our lives together and every possible minute with each other. Sorry, that's not enough. That's not nearly enough. It is if you understand the full and complete meaning of love. But love has an emotion. Love has some warm, fuzzy affinity. That's not the love we're talking about. So anyway, religion or not, let's talk about Buddhism as a philosophy. And if we're going to free ourselves from this suffering, the first noble truth, and recognize, second noble truth, how it comes from our desire nature, and just sort of get hip to this whole game that you can seek to attain something, you can desire to grow and improve and get better, but the outcome, the result doesn't always look like you intended it to. So you have to manage your expectations. And these 10 fetters are ways that we hinder that growth. They're, again, mental chains or ropes that prevent us from moving forward. So, Hannah, would you read the first one, please?
Yes. The first one is belief in material self, craving, desire for forms, fleeting satisfaction.
And this is the most important of the 10. That's why it's usually listed as number one. The belief that you are your physical body. This is the biggest fetter or hindrance of all. Because along with it comes an assumption that you're separate, that you're disconnected. You are this meat body. Certainly, some aspect of self is a reference to our physical form, no question. But we have impact on other people. We have positive impact. You have a negative impact. You have a neutral impact. Various shades of gray. I remember years ago, maybe 30, 40 years ago, very popular term, you are what you eat. Suddenly everybody was awakened, it seemed. This is like my college days, as I recall, to this understanding that nutrition and good health required an awareness of nutrition and what you eat. Well, we're also who we hang out with. We are our values, our priorities, our virtues, or our lack of virtue. But the more self-centered we become, the more unhappy we're going to be. And the more fear, the more anxiety and stress that we suffer the more self-centered we're going to become, which is going to create more confusion and more fear, more ignorance. You don't mind me insulting us all because we're all ignorant at times. But that's a frightening situation. That generates more fear and anxiety, which is confusing, which generates more ignorance. So there is a vicious cycle here revolving around self-centeredness, believing I am this body, I am this single lifetime, I am my health issues, I am my disease, I am the fact that I've missed a meal and I'm hungry, whatever. So this is a horrible mistake. And it's at the root of everything in Buddhist philosophy. And much of Eastern philosophy, Hinduism, Sikhism, Jainism, Confucianism, uh, all these different philosophies that flow out of the Eastern wisdoms and intersect and overlap, they all dance around the awareness that, like light, if you put white light through a prism, you get a whole spectrum of colors, and you might say, I'm red. And someone over here says, I'm blue. But you're really not. You've separated yourself from the white light. Or the other allegory, one I like a lot, is everything about the ocean, except for the creatures that live in it, the fish and the whales and the dolphins and the octopus, except for the critters that live in the ocean, everything about the ocean is in every drop of water. As water evaporates from the ocean, it loses its salt. It doesn't carry the salt. But water is water, H2O, on a molecular level. So the drop gets separated. It thinks it's a drop, and then it thinks it's a snowflake, and then it thinks it's a hailstone. In Hawaii, they have 26 words for rain. It's one of the things I loved about Hawaii. They have so many different kinds of rain. This is noi. What is noi? That's a special kind of very, very gentle rain, almost like a mist. Like maybe you've heard people that live in the northern climes, the Inuits, have a dozen names for snow. And so it is. The separated drop forgets it's the ocean, don't you see? And thinks, well, I'm a dewdrop. No, I'm a river. No, I'm a mountain lake. No, you're all the ocean. And awareness is the way we remember we're part of one thing. It's that awareness, the ultimate awareness, is to realize there's just one of us here. There's one thing at work. It's called life. It's called love. It's consciousness. It's awareness. It has a bunch of different names. It's sentience, right? And it manifests as a meat body, but you're not this body any more than you are the clothes you wear. Yet, don't you know people who think they are their clothes? Or the car they drive. I am my car. I need a better car to make a good impression. And I must dress for success. Or how about I'm the house I live in? Who do you think I am? Have you seen the mansion that I live in? I'm a very important person. So if people can be confused on those levels, it's understandable that we could be confused about thinking we are this physical body. And this is where we begin in the hindrances, the rejection of that separation, moving into harmony and ultimately unity by expanding our awareness. Number 2, Hannah.
Okay, number 2 is doubt or uncertainty, especially about the Buddha's awakeness, the Four Noble Truths, and the Noble Eightfold Path.
My understanding of this, I referred to in the meditation today about knowing things instead of believing. And how do you do that? Well, to talk about the word faith is to get into semantics. And I would not dispute that there's value in being faithful, having a belief in something. I personally don't care for the word. I'd rather know something than try to convince myself I believe it. But you are the experiment. You are the experience. So what the Buddhist would say to you is study these Four Noble Truths. The last of which, the fourth noble truth, is the Noble Eightfold Path, which is the how-to. And many of you were here a couple of months ago when we devoted an entire class to the Eightfold Path. And just before that, the Sermon on the Mount. I wanted to cover both since both are 8 steps. The Beatitudes, the summary of the Sermon on the Mount, are 8 in number. And the fourth noble truth is the Eightfold Path. They're very similar in a lot of ways. So try it out. Do it until, if you ever get evidence, well, this stuff doesn't make sense, it doesn't work, fine. Then drop it. And the teachings of Buddha say as much. Don't believe anything that don't believe authoritative books, don't believe people who hold themselves out to be authoritative figures, don't believe anyone or anything unless it resonates in your heart as well as appears to be true in your mind. Trust that intuition, trust life, trust yourself. Try these basic principles. They're 4 noble truths, it's not a whole lot. And then the last one, the fourth, is this Eightfold Path. And then study the Beatitudes, and then study Judaism, and then study Islam, and then study Native American traditions, and study mysticism, and theosophy, and anthroposophy, and Neoplatonism, and you say, my God, I don't have time to do all of that. Well, I think you do, to some degree. And my goodness, what's more important than an attempt to understand who you are and why you're here? I think that beats a couple hours a day on TikTok, right? Number 3, Hannah.
Okay, number 3, attachment to rites and rituals.
Yeah, this is easy. This is the same thing. The problem with rites and rituals is they become rote and habitual. And then you lose your conscious awareness. You're just going through the ritual. Many people pray this way. This is one of my personal frustrations, having been raised a Catholic. There's only like 3 or 4 prayers of significance, and a rosary is only 2 different prayers, and you got to say them over and over and over and over and over and over and over again until they lose all their meaning. Again, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. The Lord's Prayer, a part of the Lord's Prayer. I've said that so many times as a kid, had no idea what that meant. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Oh, that's a nice little rhyme. I like that, but what's it mean? Nobody ever told me what it meant. Hundreds and hundreds of times I made the sign of the cross on my body, touching my forehead in the name of the Father, my heart in the name of the Son, my shoulders in name of the Mother, Holy Spirit. Nobody ever told me for all the catechism and all the sermons, and nobody ever said why you touch your forehead in the name of your Father or the heart in the name of the Son. I'm not sure priests and nuns even know. But there are reasons. Your mental nature is a lower correspondence of the Father aspect of the Divine Trinity. Christ represents the heart, the love, the consciousness. Your shoulders are the material body, the material world. The very word material comes from mater, mother. It's the Mother Earth, Gaia, Mother Nature. Oh my God. Why don't they tell us that stuff? Because they give us rites and rituals instead. And then it's like brushing your teeth. You don't even think about it. You just do it. Next one, Hannah.
Okay, hang on one second. Number 4, sensual desire, carnal, and any other sensory excess.
This is a hindrance or a fetter. It's like going down a dead-end road. This, again, is not forbidding you to enjoy pleasure, whether it's sensual or sensory. Sensual is usually a reference to the physical sensations of touch, not merely love-making, but a nice massage, getting your shoulders rubbed feels great. Even dancing. Why do you dance? Because it feels good. Why does that drive ultra-conservatives crazy, whether they're the Taliban or Orthodox Jews or right-wing Christians? They don't want you out there dancing and shaking your booty. And rock and roll was the devil's music in the 50s and the 60s. And we used to play this record when I was in Detroit. Every once in a while, we'd spin this record of this right-wing preacher bellowing about the demon rock and roll, and just as his voice would hit a fevered pitch about Satan and rock and roll, we'd rip into a Led Zeppelin tune or maybe a Elvis Presley song or Chuck Berry or something. You want demon rock and roll, here it is. It feels good. Nothing wrong with feeling good. Nothing wrong with enjoying a nice meal, a wonderful glass of wine. It's the pursuit of that, as if it is an end unto itself, that's the problem. It's the excess that's the problem. That's all. Don't be confused by this. This is not, you're not forbidden to enjoy yourself in Buddhist philosophy, or at any other philosophy if it's properly understood. It's just don't expect your life to have any real meaning or purpose through the pursuit of sensual or sensory pleasure. Next one, Anna.
Number 5, ill will, anger, malice. Parenthetically, violence and all intentions to harm.
Yeah, this is a thou shalt not kill stuff. But even, following the thought train, being vengeful. What did Trump say the other day? I am your retribution. That's hardcore evil. You want to go down that trail, that's up to you. But think of the karma. If you plant those seeds, what are you going to reap? So this is clearly a hindrance. This is one of the fetters. Any intention to do harm, vengeance, retribution, holding a grudge. Who's that hurt? The person I will never forgive them for what they did to me. All right, but who's suffering now? The person that's holding the grudge. It's crazy. I can't forgive them. All right, you've just condemned yourself to suffer. It seems pretty self-evident. I don't know. I'm not sure why it's so hard for people to see, except perhaps the ignorance that's born of fear. Not understanding yourself is a fearful place to be. Next, Anna.
Next, number 6, lust for material existence, greed, stealing, coveting.
Yeah, this is don't take what's not given. Don't steal stuff. It doesn't belong to you. Again, the idea that you'll be better off having stole it is a very transient feeling. It's a fleeting idea. It's not going to last. Go ahead and steal it. Fine, you stole it. Good. You feel good? No. You feel guilty, don't you? Feel ashamed of yourself. You're not going to admit it. But then there's an egoic part, the part that identifies as a separate meat body, that says, I got away with something. I stole that, right? Whatever it is. It's just a dead end. It's not going to get you. You're not, whatever pleasure you think you got from them, and however minor it may be. Well, I'm not a thief. I don't really steal big things, but well, fine. You're going to reap some of that karmically. That will constrain you in some way. Next, Hannah.
Next is number 7, lust for immaterial existence, lust for rebirth in a formless realm.
This is a curious one. It says that lusting for things of this world, material things of this world, which may be easier for you to see why this is a hindrance to your ultimate growth and liberation. If you were to do that, carry that same lust, that same craving, that same attachment for rebirth in a formless state, even that expectation, well, I'm going to be reborn in heaven and sit at the right hand of God and eat grapes all day, or I get 77 virgins when I go to heaven, like the suicide bomber has promised, 77 virgins. Yeah, well, again, it's the lust that's the problem. It's the demand. Instead of saying, hey, universe, what can I do for you? I, I am a function of you. The universe, God, prime mover, first cause, the absolute, whatever term you want to use. How can we take credit for even being here? How can we demand of the universe, I'm owed something? What what we have is a promise of eternity, but not in a particular form. An angel, a saint. It's just as easy to get intoxicated on the idea of being all holy and spiritual in this ghostly apparition on the astral plane. That's as much of a dead end as identifying as the physical body. That's all that is. Next.
Next is number 8, which says conceit, parentheses, excessive self-pride, superiority, close parentheses, jealousy, and envy. Conceit, excessive pride, superiority, jealousy, and envy.
The trap here is comparing yourself to other people. Just don't go there. Because you could not be better than, nor could you be inferior to anyone. When the truth is, you are a unique emanation of the one life. Don't you see? What we have in common is we're all from the same source. But when we manifest, we're unique. We've got fingerprint evidence and DNA proof in a universe that refuses to even replicate snowflakes. There's a reason that the universe is not redundant, that the multiplicity is so uniquely diverse in the various forms that it takes. Celebrate your uniqueness as a manifestation, as an element or an extension of the one life. And consider that there's meaning and purpose in that self-discovery and self-development. If not you, who? Right? Who's going to do this? If not you, that's your job. Discover who you are, develop who you are, and express that as service to other people, helping them do the same thing in that order. All right? That's what it's all about. So pride, a modicum of pride, I guess, is okay. You want to be proud of yourself in a good way, in a healthy way. But pride goeth before the fall kind of pride, excessive pride. Look at me, look what I can do. I mean, everybody likes applause. Everybody likes awards. I understand that. Just don't take yourself too seriously. Next, Tana.
Number 9 is restlessness hyphen non-specific anxiety and worry.
Yeah, that's self-explanatory. Non-specific anxiety. What are you worried about? I don't know. Why are you so fidgety, so nervous? I don't know. Why do you have attention deficit? You can't concentrate. You can't focus. Why is your leg bouncing like that? I don't know. I don't know. I had a kind of paralysis when I was in the 9th grade where I couldn't use my right hand. I couldn't write. I couldn't move my arm. My mother was terrified. We went to the doctor. He did a quick little exam. He said, it's stress. This is back in the early 60s when nobody knew anything about stress. He said, it's stress. I said, well, what do? I can't write. I can't do my homework. I must have been somewhere between 12 and 14 years old, as I recall. He said, write with your left hand. I said, well, okay. And I went to my teacher and said, the doctor says I got some sort of stress thing. I can't write. I got to use my left hand. It's going to be, pretty hard to read, but I want you to know what's going on. And it took about a month. And I used to do that knee bouncing thing, and I had obsessions where I would have to even out. If I tapped my left foot twice, I had to tap my right foot to even it out. And that created a pattern that I had to then step back and repeat that pattern. Total anxiety, total OCD, free-floating anxiety. That's what it is, non-specific anxiety. It's just the pressure of being a stupid teenager in a dysfunctional family for the most part. And it was just too much. Thank God I didn't get a prescription for some kind of medication. That would have really messed me up. That's all that is. We'll do a class just on anxiety and non-specific, sometimes called free-floating anxiety. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And let's wrap this up, Hannah. We're not going to get to the 5 ignorances, much less the precepts today, because I want to do some Q&A in a minute. But
okay, that's what I was going to ask you, because the 5 ignorances is next. It's number 10.
Yeah, just before you get into the list of 5, just read what precedes that.
Okay, so it is ignorance, the origin of all fear, anxiety, and confusion. Then there's 5 wrong views, and so you want me to not list those right now.
Yeah, let's do that next week. We'll do the 5 wrong views, which are the 5 kinds of ignorance, and then the basic precepts. We'll do that next week. I'd just as soon. Um, but to say that ignorance, this in many ways brings us back to the first one, the ultimate ignorance, where we began. The most important of all the fetters is this ignorant belief that we are what we appear to be, and that reality is what it appears to be when our senses and sensations are so extremely limited. It's laughable. What you hear is a tiny little sliver of vibration. Your dog hears things you do not hear. Cats, uh, animals like bats that are basically guided by sonar. They make sounds and listen to the way it reflects off objects. To find an insect flying through the sky, it uses this sonar or radar, if you will, because it's blind as a bat. And so it is with hearing, with seeing, little slivers of the spectrum that's available. Even your ability to reach out and touch, so limited. The universe we now know, as we observe the impact of gravity, we realize that close to 90% of the physical universe cannot be perceived. It does not reflect light. It is invisible. For all intents and purposes, dark matter doesn't exist. The only reason we know it's there and comprises 90% of the universe is that it's affected by gravity. And so, too, there's something called dark energy. And then there's antimatter. This universe is so much stranger and more wondrous than we've even begun to imagine. We're just beginning to scratch the surface. We're so arrogant to think we know things. It is miraculous what we're able to do, sending rockets to other planets and such, but we don't really understand this world that we live in. And we need to identify the ignorance. I'll leave it here and then let's go to the Q&A. Wisdom begins with putting your attention on what you do not know rather than what you think you know. Nobody likes a know-it-all. Our goal in learning and understanding and identifying what we do know, what we can rely on, is merely to build a platform from which we ask better questions and be about the business of exploring what we do not know and have yet to understand. About the world, yeah, but mostly about ourselves. And the game is rigged. The more you know about yourself, the more you're going to like who you are. I promise it. Double your money back guarantee in a free class. Uh, uh, you will not be disappointed. If others are telling us we're not good enough, if they reject us and don't tell us why, if we feel that we're inadequate, that's us. Those are our questions. It's not true. Everyone is wonderful. Everyone is beautiful. Even the most horrible people in this world have something beautiful inside them. They just don't know it. So have compassion because they suffer so. You say a nasty, mean, violent person suffers? Yeah, you damn right they do. So instead of defending yourself, only defending yourself against the potential of being victimized by that mean, nasty, horrible, indecent, corrupt person, you can be smart about it, watch your back, be careful who you trust, right? But at the same time, fall back on compassion for their suffering. This is the message of Christianity that is overlooked when they go on and on about blood washing away the sins of the world, and the Lord sacrificed his only son that you might be saved, and all of that. Hey, the message of Calvary is, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. That's my opinion. I don't think I'm alone in that. I'm not going to put it up for debate. I would just offer it for your consideration. That's the message. Compassion. Very, very high quality of love. Understanding the suffering of people you fear the most. So fear is ignorance. Ignorance is fear. And consequently, we live in a frightening world full of other, that which is not this. It's all illusion, but it's real enough to destroy our lives or make them difficult. So let's go to some Q&A, and then next week we'll do the 5 ignorances. I think you'll love this. The 5 different ways that we get blindsided would be another way of talking about it, and the basic precepts of Buddhist philosophy. 5 for commoners, 10 for monks and nuns. And we'll do that next week. Okay, so Hannah, do we have any questions or comments in the chat box?
There's one question and I had a couple of comments. So you tell me what you would like me to do.
Let me go to the question first.
Okay, so this is from Melinda, and I think you were kind of touching on this at the very end. It says, so how to, and then refers to number 8, which is conceit, jealousy, and envy. How to not feel superior to people who do evil things and hurt others, not feel judgmental to them.
Well, to put that into words, it might be easier to say that we have to first acknowledge the feeling and then explore the feeling to discover why it's invalid. So it doesn't make you a bad person to think there are bad people in the world. It would be naive to jump right to, well, there's a kind, loving soul in the center of that beast. We have to be smart about things. We can't be reckless with abusive people. There's no value in exposing ourselves continually to their abuse, as if that builds character or builds strong bodies 12 ways. So if somebody is abusive and they're hurting you, whether they're in your family or on your television set and in positions of power, there's no shortage of corruption in the federal government and every other institution, whether it's corruption in the church, in the temple, in the mosque, in education, in sports, professional sports, journalism. Wherever you turn, there's corruption at the top. The people often who rise to the top, there are some wonderful people who are very successful. Wonderful, wonderful people who become very successful. But there's also a lot of people at the top who got there because of their willingness to do whatever they needed to do to get there for all the wrong reasons. You see? So some big corporation, the C-suite, can be full of these executives that are overpaid and really not doing very much. Some of them are wonderful people. Some of them are horrible people, all of them are a mix. A little of this, a little of that. Is it 90-10, 60-40, 70-30? This is why there's no value in judging. But to some extent, you have to. Like we talked about a few weeks ago, the yellow light in the traffic signal is 3 seconds of giving you 3 seconds to judge whether you roll through or whether you come to a stop. And sometimes that's difficult to judge, but you do have to judge. So it's a matter of degree. To some extent, we have to judge other people in the situations we find ourselves in, but you can't rely on it as a way of understanding yourself. So if you observe corruption in other people, identify it, recognize it, understand your vulnerability to it, but finish the process with compassion. That's how you let go of it. It's just, yeah, it's a horrible situation. Yeah, it continues to affect me. Yes, we suffer as a result. But I'm not going to carry that fear and that heartache and that desire to lash out, to kill or destroy that which is killing and destroying. Hate does not conquer hate. Didn't Dr. King say that? You know, emotions are so contagious that people who hate us generate that same feeling in us. So we start hating people who hate, but our hate is righteous and their hate is wrong. You know, it doesn't work that way. You may go through that on the way to compassion. But when you finally get to compassion, that doesn't mean you now trust this individual or no longer recognize that they're corrupt, that they're evil, and that they're hurting people. And we have to work for justice. Peace and justice is pretty much what it means to be progressive. You care about the whole self, the group, the community, the nation, the world, not just your separated individual, not just me, me, me. That's one way of looking at the difference between left and right. How self-centered are we? Or how community-oriented are we? Do we care only about ourselves or more for the greater good, knowing that we're part of that greater good? If you work for the greater good, you benefit, right? It's not an either or. It's a difficult process. It's hard to talk about because both things are true. You have to identify who's corrupt, who's abusive, who's stressing you out, who is a threat or a danger. At the same time, you want to move toward compassion and forgiveness, letting go, but you still got to watch your back. You still got to work for peace and justice. It's about as clear as I can be at this point. Melinda, do you want to respond to that?
I would just say thank you. I think that was very well said, and I'll replay that because that was very helpful. Thank you.
Good. I like the hard questions, even if they're, even if I can't answer them. We got a group of really bright people that come to these classes, so I know everybody benefits from that. That's why I like doing Q&A. We have another 5 minutes or so, Hannah. By the way, you know, your questions don't have to be limited to the particular class that we've just done. You could ask a question about anything having to do with metaphysics and mysticism and comparative religion and philosophy and psychology and sociology, and it doesn't have to be limited to the topic of the day. Who else have you got, Hannah?
There's nothing else in the chat box, but I had two comments.
Of your own.
Yeah, well, one is just really short, and when you were talking about the small percentage of the universe that's absorbed or observed, I heard somewhere along the line that we only use 2% of our brains. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, it used to be 10%.
Oh.
For years, for decades, people said it was just sort of a common, you know, adage that, we only use 10% of our brain. I really don't know what that's based on. And if they're down to 2% now, that's even more believable. We have no idea what 100% is. That's the problem. We only discovered in 2005, I remember very well because I was teaching at the time, what we now call brain plasticity, that the brain can grow new gray matter and white matter, that the brain can grow, that it can rewire itself, that areas of the brain that are devoted to one thing, like a speech center or a auditory center or a visual center or a center having to do with motion and equilibrium, can rewire itself to take on other tasks. People lose their vision, their hearing improves, or vice versa. And to see the actual literal brain growth, the organ that is the brain gets bigger, it weighs more. We didn't know that until 2005. We thought, well, the brain grows until you're about 20 or 21 years old. Which explains all the stupid stuff that we do as teenagers. I'm amazed sometimes that I even survived being a teenager. It's a miracle that I survived. I was so oblivious. Nobody ever sat me down and talked to me about how to be aware, how to consider the consequences of my behavior. I was so impulsive. And if it feels good, do it. And don't even think about other people. For all my religious training and all the parenting and all the finger wagging and the really important stuff. Hey, Michael, wake up. Be aware. Be alert. Take some responsibility for your life. Consider the consequences of what you say before you say it. Maybe it was just me, but I never got that kind of training. How about, Michael, be
about
kind.
myelin?
Nobody ever told me to be kind. Or nobody taught me to be kind. So you're asking me about myelin in the brain?
Uh-huh.
I don't know the chronology of that research. I just know that, to speak to your question about what's 100%, we don't know what percentage we use if we don't know the total capacity or what the brain is capable of. I think we've proven, for example, that we share a consciousness, and on some level, there is a collective, as Carl Jung described it, the collective unconscious, that ESP is real, that precognition is real. There's just numerous studies that prove this stuff is real. Clairvoyance, or so-called remote viewing, is real. The government studied it. I've interviewed people who were hired by the government, Stanford researchers and others, who, because this information is now declassified, are able to say, yeah, we did the research. We know the other guys. We're all part of a group. We know each other. We did the remote viewing research. It's real. It's statistically verified. There's no longer any question the so-called ESP or other psychic phenomena is real. The brain is capable of that, right? Well, funny thing, ancient people knew that and then forgot it as we became more and more reliant on mechanical and electrical technology. The brain sort of atrophied, and we forgot that we could trust our intuition, that we could, as Christ said, knock and the door shall be opened, asking ye shall receive. That what you think and how you feel matters, not just to you, but to the collective. It's sort of like we're the Borg, we're all plugged into the same hive, but in the best of ways. What was your other comment?
Well, it's after 11:30, so I don't want to hold anybody hostage.
They can leave or stay. Just drop it on me.
Well, I was just wondering if there's a connection. I mean, it might be kind of self-explanatory, but between 8 and 9, no, yeah, but between 9 and 10. 9 is restlessness, non-specific anxiety and worry. 10, ignorance, the origin of all fear, anxiety, and confusion. I've heard you say a lot that all fear is fear of the unknown, and I wonder if you connect those.
They're all connected. They're all part of one thing. All the fetters. There's nothing in Buddhism that is not a part of everything in Buddhism, because it's based on the idea that all separation is an illusion. It's actually quite a wonderful place to conclude the class today. The three jewels are connected. The Four Noble Truths are all part of one thing. The Eightfold Path is really one thing. Everything touches everything. And it's so fundamental that it's just the perfect question. Every one of those 10 things overlaps to some degree and touches to some degree on every other one of those fetters. And so it is throughout Eastern philosophy. There is no separation is a Western idea. It's Europe and America. So I can't speak to Africa. Africa has too many different cultures. I can't generalize about it. In the Middle East is, as it suggests, right in the middle between Eastern philosophy and Western philosophy. But the idea of separation is pretty much a Western European Renaissance mechanistic view of the universe, So it's a nice place to end. Yeah, they're all correlated. They all overlap. Hey, everybody.
Hanif did ask, is there a book or books you can recommend on today's subject?
Oh, too many to mention. The Pillars of Zen comes to mind. I would just Google the Fetters. I would Google Buddhist Fetters. F like Frank Fetters, Buddhist Fetters. Check YouTube. There's some great videos on YouTube. And if you'd rather read, there's plenty of other stuff available. Or podcasts. Just I can't think offhand. Anything by Pema Chodron. I mean, I do have my favorite Buddhist authors. I really love Pema Chodron. There's some other books I like. Everywhere, I forget who wrote it. Everywhere You Go, There You Are is one of my favorite Buddhist books. Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I think that's Robert Persig, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Nothing specific. I'm sorry?
Maintenance or riding?
Maintenance.
Oh, okay.
Zen and Motorcycle Maintenance, I think is the name of it.
Oh.
I'm going back 40 years now in my memory, but I have a reading list. Check my reading list on, go to michaelbenner.com and then click podcast. And on the podcast page in the upper right, you'll see a tab for reading list. There's probably 100 books in there you can check out. All right. I want you to all unmute and say hello and goodbye. And thank you very much for being here. Namaste, aloha, and salam.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone else.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Michael, there's some going